I'm joined by Michael Every from Hong Kong. He's the head of financial market research for Asia at Rabobank. And Michael, in the past, markets in Thailand have seen these bouts of volatility whenever there are protests, but they almost always recover. Can it be different this time?
Well, I think that depends how long this protest goes on for and how bad it gets before it finishes. I think those two matters will really end up driving exactly what the market does.
Well, you're talking about the duration, so that is the question. At what point do people should start seriously worry about the damage to the real economy, not just in financial markets?
Well, in terms of the real economy, I think it's very important to remember that most of the key economic centres are not located in the centre of Bangkok, which is where all this drama is unfolding. They're out in the eastern seaboard, for example, and the factories there are still working as normal. That's one of the reasons why the markets haven't been sold off too aggressively. However, of course, there are travel warnings in place for Bangkok now, and that will begin to affect the tourism industry and the meetings and conference and incentives industry going forward, and that problem will grow depending on how long the protests last. And there's also a second issue, and that is that this particular government had been looking at introducing a big fiscal stimulus spending program going forward to build high-speed trains and other infrastructure. And that particular project is now very much called into question because the finance ministry, for example, is currently being occupied. So it will be very, very hard to proceed with it.
Okay, I see your point there. That also means if the in-local government eventually gets booted out, that could seriously damage growth next year then? Or is this the kind of plan that doesn't matter who's in government, they'll just have to stick to it?
No, the opposition parties have made it very clear they don't agree with this particular plan. They see it as too much pump priming with too much corruption associated along with it. Now, were they to assume power, they may change their tune, but as things stand, we have to pencil in that if we have a change of government, something like around 21% of GDP, which was going to be spent on infrastructure over the next 7 or 8 years, is suddenly going to evaporate. Now, that must have an impact on the real economy.
And the other thing is, though, like we said, in Thailand right now, confidence is already pretty low, and you have this bout of turmoil. Does that make the country especially vulnerable to Fed's tapering? If it does happen in the first quarter, what does it mean for the baht?
Well, it certainly doesn't help. Once we get that tapering trade and that tapering momentum starting to kick in the currency markets, obviously the markets will then be looking for any additional weakness on top. And this kind of political instability, where effectively no one's really in control of the government fully at the moment, and things could deteriorate even further very rapidly, is not going to help sentiment at all.
Okay, thank you so much, Michael. That was Michael Every joining me from Hong Kong.